Lesson 9. We all welcome you in this educational video. Today we would be discussing Lesson 9, Getting Ready for Wage Employment. First, let us do difficult. This is the sign of difficult, and this is the sign of words. We will be doing difficult words. All the difficult words are from this lesson only. Employment, registration, this is teleconference, counseling, this is biodata. When we apply for a job, we give biodata. This is interaction. When we meet someone, anyone applies to the employer and meets the boss, then they interact. This is physical fitness. This is lesson number 9, Getting Ready for Wage Employment. We would be discussing this. Now you can see on the screen about the job vacancies. What are the sources we get the information about? You can see on the screen number 1, and employment exchange is written over there. Let me explain you about this employment exchange. For example, when people want to apply for a job and they exchange their CVs, they give interview, and after getting selection in the interview, they get job. This second source of information is the placement agencies. Agencies are like the mediator person or companies. When we look for a job, we don't know where to go or which person to meet. So the people who are like mediator, they are known as placement agencies, are responsible for making advertisement and providing jobs. This third source of information which you can see on the screen is newspapers and magazines. You get information through newspapers, news, and also through different magazines are there. When you read, and sometimes you get the information, sometimes there are magazines for job purpose only. In the newspaper also there are different columns for the job advertisements. Now this fourth source of information you can see on the screen is about the employment news, and that emphasize on the job only. This is the newspaper for only employment purpose. There is no other information, but in e-news in brief we call employment news is only for the employment purpose. This fifth source of information you can see on the screen is internet. In internet also you get so many information. When you do Google or you search different kinds of jobs, you comes to know about different availability and hirings taking place. This sixth source of information is the leaflets. You must have seen the newspaper, and sometime inside the newspaper there are few colorful papers which are packed just along with the newspaper. So these are leaflets. These are also for employment purpose. Sometimes people distribute for people so that people comes to know about the jobs availability. Now this seventh source of information which you can see on the screen is notice boards of offices and factories. Like the sixth point we discussed about the leaflets, it's a similar information provided on the notice board. This eighth source of information is television and radios. Yes, television and radios are for entertainment, but along with that, it is also used for the employment and news regarding the job purpose. For example, in villages which are really very far off places, they don't have information from the TV, but they have radio. So that radio communication is used for job through this communication mode also. Now you can see on the screen ninth source of information, that is through mobile phones. Nowadays we all have internet and different this e-facility, internet facility on our mobile, because it is we can easily access all the information in one mobile only. So this is a very good source of information for employment. Now the 10th source of information which you can see on the screen is our friends and our relatives. Whenever we want any news and we look for a job, we tell to our friends and known people, our relatives and people who we met with, our office staff or our friends, so they also provide us information. Now you can see on the screen role of employment exchange. This is just connected with the previous explanation. I would be explaining this. The first A point you can see on the screen is registration and placement. For example, I want to apply for a job and I have just given my information and they registered me, and when there is any requirement they can call me. The B point explains about the collecting market information, what kind of jobs are required, or the data, you can say, job, what are the needs you want to apply. Now you can see on the screen a list of points. The C point explains about the career counseling and guidance. Sometimes we need job and we ask people for help and tell that we are not aware about where to go, how to proceed. So there are some centers and places where they provide us, they guide us, and they lead us for our employment. The D point explains that there are sometimes surveys done to know the employment details, information about employment. The E point explains about the arrangement of unemployment allowances. In government, there are funds which are given to people who are unemployed, because when they will get job, then that fund would be given to some other person who is unemployed. Now you can see on the screen the processes of registration. Registration, as we have discussed, it also has processes. I would be explaining all the process step in a detailed way. In earlier we understood about the job, registration, counseling, guidance, and the uses related to that. So as we already understood about the registration process, so what are the steps we would be learning now? The A point explains that first of all we need to visit the employment exchange. Wherever is the office, we need to go there and talk to the people. The B point explains like a person who is looking for a job. For example, if I am the job seeker, I want a job, then I need to submit my important documents which tells about my qualification and which provides related details. All the documents I need to enclose with the registration form. The C steps tells that the person who would be in the office, employment office or the agency, that person would just verify the documents and check with the proof original. They will cross check all the details. And the D point explains they issue a registration card. They will keep the xerox of all the documents, and in return they would give us a registration number. So that number would be used for as a proof that I have registered my name, and if there is any call from the company, then I can provide that number. Now you can see on the screen the jobs available through employment exchange. There are different kinds of jobs available. You can say that not any kind of job. There are some lists of job availability there. The first word you can see on the screen is motor mechanic, like repairing of any machine or motor machine. The second name you can see on the screen is about the clerk, the booking clerk. The third word which you can see on the screen is nurses and technician. Like you have seen the doctors and the nurses, they give medicine and they take care of the patients. The D word explains about the data entry operators. So according to the need of the work, there are different jobs. The fifth word which you can see on the screen is when in any office there is a senior person and he calls someone, then the person who takes care of the senior is known as peon. The next word below that is carpenter, the person who works with the wood or made things from wood. The next word below that is of caretaker. For example, when sometime there are people who are older, let's take example of 50 or 60 above 50 years or above 60 years, then they need someone to take care of them. So caretaker can be a person. The next word which is written below that is office assistant. In office, there are different kinds of work. So people who works under the office staff is office assistant. Now you can see on the screen. Let's now understand about the role of placement agencies. As we already have discussed, if someone is looking for a job, then we want a good salary and good work environment. So what do we do and how do we proceed? So there are placement agencies which help us in finding job. So let's now understand the procedure. The first step you can consider is they bring together employers and the candidates who is looking for a job. The second main role for those agencies is to provide advertisement for the vacancies. Whatever information they have about the job, they do the advertisement and they publicize their information. The next step is those agencies, they prepare a data bank with them. And the next role which placement agencies do is they also keep informing the job seekers about the job. Let's now take a break and we will continue after the break.
कि कोरोना वैश्विक महामारी से जंग अभी है जारी, तो जब तक दवाई नहीं तब तक ढलाई नहीं। सरकार द्वारा जारी आदेशों का पालन करना जिम्मेदारी है हमारी। मास्क लगाकर निकलें घर से बाहर, 2 गज दूरी बनाकर करें नमस्कार, हाथों को धोएं दिन में बार बार, तभी सुरक्षित रहेगा कोरोना से देश और समाज। शिक्षा का जिम्मा NIOS का काम, घर से शिक्षार्थियों के लिए शिक्षा हुई अब आसान।
प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, कहीं पड़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने हम, अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत।
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, स्वयं बने हम,
You can see on the screen the role of advertising medias. Like the first one is print media and the second one is electronic media. I would be explaining both. The first one is print media. The second is electronic media. The first one is, I will explain you both so that you can understand. The first print media, it is on the screen, you can see. Like the first one was print media, these are all the related examples. You all have a newspaper every day, you see. There are information about the jobs and placements. And also the employment news we already discussed. It has information about news about jobs only. In the daily newspaper, we have all kinds of information, but in employment news, we have information related to employment only. The third example is of journals, like 1 week or 1 month or 2 weeks or 4 months. So it's kind of periodical information is given through print media in the journal. Earlier we already discussed about newspaper and magazines. Now this fourth example is of the magazines. You may have seen the colorful book with the different kinds of information, NGOs and different organizations. So they all have their own magazines. Now you can see on the screen is examples of electronic media. The first example, print media, we already discussed. Now this is the second one, electronic media. Now I would be explaining all these examples. The first example you can see is of the internet. The second is television, and the third electronic media is radio. All these are used for employment information only. These are the electronic media. Now you can see on the screen how to apply for a job all these steps are discussed in sequence, first, second and third. Like first what we do, we prepare a biodata. Do we go to job and tell them that I have come for a job? They would like to know about us, our background. So that is why we need to prepare a biodata. First of all, we need to put all the information, make a proper document, and then the second is we need to prepare it with a covering letter like where we are going and what are our needs. The third step is we also need to know what are the important do's and don'ts which we need to follow. Do's and don'ts, what do you think that I would be explaining further? This is the first step we would be understanding in detail, how to apply for a job. First, what do we do? We had seen the 3 steps, first, second and third. Now this is the first step we are understanding. This is about preparation of biodata. In this we write our name, our address, our telephone number and our email address, and also we give all the related information about ourselves. How would we be exchanging our information, and what is our objective, what is my objective of getting job. So related information we give in that biodata. In the biodata we also provide our educational details, like we are 10th pass or 12th pass or we are graduate. So all the related information we write in the biodata, and also we provide details about our technical education, whatever skills we have. Below that you can see the work experience. Also, if we have any previous work experience, so we should mention all the experiences in that biodata. And below that you can see the personal details. So there are personal detail column, you can fill in that also. Now first point we already have understood. The second one is covering letter, which you can see on the screen. In the covering letter there is an opening statement. Opening statement tells about I am applying for a job for so and so with details. The B point explains about the suitability of your candidature, if you are suitable for the job which you are applying for. So that you need to mention in that letter. And the third information you need to provide in the covering letter is about the organization. You have to write about the positive points. And then fourth point in the covering letter is you need to request for your selection and you are the suitable candidate. So such kind of request you should not order, you can make a request in the covering letter, because that's a kind of request letter. So that is why you can request for further action in that letter. Now we have understood the first step, second step. This is the third step which we are going to discuss now. Third is we need to follow the do's and don'ts when we apply for a job. Like you can see on the screen, the A point explains that you need to follow all the instructions, whatever instructions there are for a job. What are the rules? If there is any things you need to follow, so you should be aware of all those instructions. So that is important. It's not that you just yourself start doing any just start yourself following any instruction. It's not like that. The B point explains that you have to make sure that your application which you have written and prepared, that should be really professional, and it should be reached there on time. So the punctuality, and it should reach at the employer's place before time, before the deadline date, and it should be there on time. You should be careful that it is not delayed or someone else makes any delay, so you should be careful about it. Now you can see on the screen the C point. It explains that we need to include all the documents in our covering letter and the biodata prepared. Your necessary certification, testimonial documents should be attached with your application. You should be careful that you don't miss any paper. So all the papers should be in proper place. Below that you can see the D point. It explains that whenever you apply for any job, so the covering letter should not be same everywhere. No. You should write a separate covering letter because the company is different, the work need is different. So accordingly, you need to write separate covering letter for all the different applications wherever you apply. Now you can see on the screen few points. The E point explains, and when you have finished applying, then just yourself don't assume that your application has been received. No, it is not right. So better you should go and inquire whether your application has been received by them or not. I had sent the application on so and so date. So that should be your responsibility. The next F point explains that when there is any job, if any person is helping you, providing information about the job, then don't write their name. It should be confidential, so don't include it in references. You can see on the screen few points. The G points explains that try to get all the facts related to job before applying. You should not be just so careless about the job. So it is your responsibility. You should collect the related information for the particular job for which you are applying and be prepared. And the H point explains that if there is any mistake, then better learn from them. You should not take them for granted because learning gives you experiences. So you can use those experiences for your future betterment. You can see on the screen about employment test. Employment test, like when we apply for a job and we given our application, everything we have submitted and we have attached covering letter, all these we already have discussed. So after our letter is received and we are called for interview, then these tests are used. You can see on the screen written test. This is the first important thing. When there are so many applications in any exam, then there is a kind of written test They have questions and you have to write answers. You can see on the screen number 2. This is also a kind of test, physical fitness test. There are different kinds of physical tests which are done to test the physical fitness. And the third image you can see on the screen is, the first one was written test, the second was physical fitness test, and this is the third kind of test, which is interview. Like in any office, when there is an employer and the people who has applied for a job, there is interview. Now let's understand about the personal interview. Personal interviews are also of various types. The first one, which you can see on the screen, is telephonic interview, which is done on telephone. The B point explains that when interview is done through a conference, then it is a conference interview. The third C point is chatting through internet, and the D point explains about, we already discussed about telephonic interview, conference interview, and chatting through internet. Now this D is a little different. This is kind of face-to-face interaction when we meet physically with the employer. Now you can see on the screen the process for personal interview. What are the processes we would be understanding? It is also in steps. So the first one is practice for the interview. If we are not practiced enough about the interview, then we may make mistakes and we may get nervous, because sometimes there are many people who take interview. So to avoid our nervousness, we should practice beforehand and prepare for the interview. The second process is on the day of interview, when the interview is going to happen. So same day you need to practice, rehearse yourself and do well, empower yourself for the interview. The third process, which is important, is that during the interview, when there is a final time which comes and your interview is just about to happen. So during the interview, when you are at the interview table and there are people asking questions, sometimes there is one person, sometimes there are many people who ask questions about the job. So now let's take a break.
कि कोरोना वैश्विक महामारी से जंग अभी है जारी, तो जब तक दवाई नहीं तब तक ढलाई नहीं। सरकार द्वारा जारी आदेशों का पालन करना जिम्मेदारी है हमारी। मास्क लगाकर निकलें घर से बाहर, 2 गज दूरी बनाकर करें नमस्कार, हाथों को धोएं दिन में बार बार, तभी सुरक्षित रहेगा कोरोना से देश और समाज। शिक्षा का जिम्मा NIOS का काम, घर से शिक्षार्थियों के लिए शिक्षा हुई अब आसान।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो,
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वह विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत,
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, स्वयं बने, हम
Now you can see on the screen questions. Earlier we had discussed the chapter. Now these are the questions from the video. We already have discussed all the answers. So it is easy for you to now find. Now the question number 1 is explain sources of information of job vacancies. Answer is already discussed. Now the second question which you can see on the screen is about biodata. You have to explain points to be added in a person's biodata. Answer we have already discussed in the video. Now the next question which you see on the screen is about the employment exchange. You have to explain the role of employment exchanges in India. The answer has already been discussed. Now the question 4. Earlier we already had explained the test kind of text, first, second, third. You have to explain the selection test forms of interview. The answer has already been discussed in the video. The fifth question which you can see on the screen is, you have to explain the process of name registration in the employment exchange. All these steps and the processes we have discussed. So you should be careful and explain all the processes. How to make a request and all the points, all the answer has already been discussed in the video. Thank you so much.